Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. As always, thank you so much for being here. I sincerely appreciate it. And obviously, I'm here to help. So, today's session, in our downtime, we're going to be talking today a little bit about these recessionary items and just thinking about the recession and the overall job market. Again, the intent is always to talk about this in our downtime. These are really Q&A sessions. Brad, thank you. Audio and video are good. You're my partner in crime here, so I appreciate it. So let's get warmed into the session. It always takes a few minutes to get people on, and so let's do it. So if we're talking about going backwards, which I always do, let's go backwards to yesterday's video. So I really wanted to switch up yesterday's video a little bit and show you how to answer a question about just receiving constructive feedback or negative feedback, but in a hypothetical manner. We're so used to tackling that question from tell me about a time your manager gave you negative feedback. And we're always just kind of really fixated on the past and how we've been through that negative feedback in the past. But if you were to get negative feedback, like it's the approach I take in the video yesterday. I was really just happy with how it all came out. I can't always say that I'm 100% totally pumped about the videos, but yesterday's, I think it really breaks down to show you how, for a hypothetical answer, the components that would be necessary to handling negative feedback. And that could really be from leadership. You could pivot it and take that to focusing in on a critical stakeholder, colleague, cross-functional partner, etc. So if you haven't had a chance to check out yesterday's video, it's definitely short for a hypothetical answer. It's about 7.5 minutes. As always, I recommend on the playback for me, I'm low and slow. You can 1.25x me, 15x me, 2x me. I do all my learnings on 2x. So just something I recommend. It feels really fast at first. Then you'll get so comfortable listening to things on 2x that you won't be able to go back. And now it's funny because whenever I'm listening to 2x and it's like in the car, there's always funny things happening. My wife makes fun of me for it. So, okay. So let's dive in a little bit. Again, just for people coming into the session, we are going to be talking about global recession and the job market. And I really want to be talking about some of the indicators and lagging indicators that us as entrepreneurs see really typically very far ahead of just the general landscape, because we see how it impacts our business. So again, just something we'll chat about. If this is your first time here, my name is Jeff H. Sipe. My business is practiceinterviews.com, and you can find anything and everything you need at practiceinterviews.com. It will get you to my LinkedIn. It will get you to the YouTube. Obviously, it will highlight my products like my AI tool, my course, which 20% discount just today. If you use the coupon code Paris. I'm totally obsessed with the Olympics, so I thought that was appropriate. So I'm still doing one-on-one coaching, interview coaching, negotiation coaching, and strategy sessions, resume, LinkedIn, networking, which obviously those sessions are becoming more common in today's job market. On the website, on practiceinterviews.com, I think I'm maybe 2 blog posts away from 100 blogs. So definitely check those out. It's a short snippet of information that you might find valuable. I have a bunch of free resources on there as well. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday and new original content every Monday. And I'm definitely going to be pushing more short form content. The last couple of weeks I've only produced one. It's really not good enough for myself and for you, the community. So I'm going to continue to try and push those shorts. Okay, let's dive in a little bit. I know we're going to be talking quite a bit about the global recession, the job market. This is a Q&A session, so anything and everything. Doesn't have to be questions. It can just be comments, thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Brad, my savior, my video and audio savior, thank you so much. Liz, great to have you here. And by the way, if you just want to pop in and say where you're visiting from, we have a really cool global community. And so we get people from all over the world, which is amazing. I know the time of day isn't amazing for everybody globally, though. Thanks for being here, Liz. Good to have you here. Thank you so much. Howdy. Thanks for being here. Okay, let's dive in. First question. Awesome. There's a ton of qualified candidates out there. And I heard from an HR person that most jobs are only up for a week and they only look at the first 100 or so. Okay. How should I tackle this knowing I can't apply to more than 3 jobs a day of editing? Should I use my rapid fire technique for some jobs? Okay, let's start with this. So again, I don't necessarily agree with that person's statement because, and again, I'll go back for this to this comment for the community. So they're only going to look at the first 100. Well, that's probably not true. I mean, again, that may be one person's input and one person's feedback and how they go about it, but the reality is that I'm going to keyword search the resumes that come in through job applicants, referrals, etc. So I'm going to be able to narrow that down. So whether it's 100 or 1,000, I can always do a pretty narrowed down search to see if that criteria is hitting my top 10. And that's instantly going to eliminate a lot of people anyway. So I don't know how viable that is. I just think it's really important that I continue to comment and we continue to focus on the fact that people are over applying now. In 2024, hundreds up to 1,000 applications. Yes, we have to apply to jobs, right? Because it's low hanging fruit. And if we see a job that's a really good fit, there's no reason why we shouldn't apply for it. Now, of course, if that job is a really strong fit, bulleted resume summary, 5 to 7 bullets, specific skills for why you're a fit for the role. And you can run that exercise through ChatGPT. You throw your resume and the job description into GPT and it will create that great summary. But we have to default to pushing our referrals, default to networking in all sorts of different ways. And it's just a pause moment for us. You're going to have to start getting way, way more creative. This reminds me a lot of where we kind of landed in that 2009, 2010 bucket. It's the numbers. You're going to see the numbers get worse. I can just tell you, it's not going to be as good. It's not gloom and doom. It's okay. But just how are you getting creative? So last week we talked a lot about networking. Are you going out and doing volunteer work where you're just meeting people in your community? If you can do it, if you're physically capable and you have the time, right? Are you going out and meeting people in the community and networking in that way? Are you networking with people at social events? It doesn't just have to be like formal LinkedIn. You really want to be letting people know that you're open to work and what kind of job you're looking for. Just saying I'm open to work isn't enough, right? I'm looking specifically for an analytical role and I've been looking at tech companies in this area. Do you know anybody who might be working in that area in a similar capacity? Like we really want to push the networking as much as possible. Again, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but there's just this badge of honor, it seems like, and it's not a badge of honor for a number of roles applied to. And so back off on the applying and spend more time networking as much as you can. Does admitting when you made a mistake when answering a question make you look bad? Or should it be a minor mistake wouldn't mean that much? This is a great question, Brad. I think it really depends on the scenario, right? And I think you are absolutely hitting it perfectly by saying, well, if it's a minor mistake, we probably just want to move on. If it's a major mistake, like we realize we're answering the wrong question, we want to pause, acknowledge, and say, hey, I think I need to stop and restart. That acknowledgement, there's this weird thing about acknowledging errors and mistakes in an interview. What does it do? In my opinion, this is not all the time, but in my opinion, it reminds your audience that you're interviewing and interviewing is hard. I think they forget that. I think they sometimes go into these interviews and go through the motions. And if in an interview you just stop and you say, oh, I really would like to restart. I made a mistake and it would be really better for me and I hope better for you to restart. Again, it just reminds them interviewing is hard. So I think if it's something minor, yeah, just move on. But if it's something major, you want to address it, restart, repivot, refocus. Great question. Second question, should I bring using the XYZ Google format for every bullet? Is it excessive and boring, or am I just overthinking it? And is it always XYZ, or can I mix it around? Um, well, I think what you're speaking about is Google's like resume format, which I never follow. They do have a specific resume format that's usually pushed to internal candidates who are interviewing for full-time roles. I know when I had to do that, they told me to put it in that format, and I simply didn't do it, and it didn't matter. That I have a specific way that I like to see resume bullets, and it's pretty straightforward. I really like in your resume bullets a mix of the day to day and accomplishments, and I actually do have an order. I like, 2 or 3 day to day bullets, and then 2 to 3 bullets that are accomplishments. Here's why. If I really like your summary and you've done a great job on the summary part of your resume, I'm going to get into it. It's really the summary that's going to draw me in, and obviously if you have some strong brands on there, that's going to draw me in as well. But I really want to understand just a little bit more about what you do and what you did on a daily basis, and then what were your specific accomplishments. When it's just accomplishment based, in my opinion, it's just hard. I don't really know, like, oh, does this person doing the day to day stuff that my hiring manager wants, that the job requires? So I like a nice mix. And then with accomplishments, make sure that you bring in as many numbers as you can, and obviously there's confidentiality items there. I don't want you to break confidentiality, but I want to know the impact, and understand that impact is, it's easier to understand when numbers are backed by something. So meaning like increased 20% customer satisfaction. It's like, well, I don't really know what that means. Increased 20% customer satisfaction across 500,000 customers based on surveys. That's a percentage that's backed by data, and it helps me understand, well, that was really, really broad, sweeping, positive impact. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have more questions. I'm interviewing with Amazon this week. I'm having trouble answering the behavioral questions because I'm trying to show complexity and experience in the answer, so I don't end up answering or completely stuck. Which is more important, answering the question or showing more about my experience or complexity? I'm having trouble doing both. Okay, so one of my strongest recommendations, and this is, I think, a little bit different from some other people, is I think with Amazon, we see the leadership principles and we say to ourselves, okay, I have to incorporate that and incorporate some form of complexity in my answer, and then we're overthinking it. I would say really just focus in on making your answers, your behavioral answers, as robust as possible. The challenge is with Amazon. Amazon, Amazon wants relevancy. What does that mean? They're really looking for your behavioral answers to only fall in the last couple of years. I would say try and slide that back 3 or 4 years if you can. For the older examples, you're going to want to scrape out some of the dates and that sort of information, because they are pretty nitpicky on that. Of course, it is a pretty much 100% behavioral interview unless you're going after a technical role. So the best way to practice for Amazon is, just as you're thinking about your behavioral answers, just get into the depth of the steps. What are the steps that are most common with our behavioral answers? It's the same thing every single time. And so most of our answers should start with data, research, planning, and stakeholder conversations. We usually got to understand what's going on, what's happened in the past, and then chat with people about it. Pretty simple, right? Then the missing piece of the puzzle, and this is where some of the complexity comes in: testing and execution. We don't test everything, right? Sometimes we just get into the execution phase. But speaking about testing and execution is probably the biggest missed piece of the puzzle in your actions of your behavioral answers. Get into how you executed. That's a really critical part. Past performance predicts future performance. We got to be talking about how we executed. And then the end, launching, documenting, presenting, like bring all those pieces in. That should help make your answers a little bit more robust. Obviously, I have lots of videos on this. You can test this with the AI tool or the course or anything like that. But just depth in your actions is going to be best. And I really hope that that helps. I'm not sure it did, but if it didn't and you have more questions, please let me know. Hey, Daphne, good to have you here as always. Hey, Jeff, I have a GCA interview this week. Trying to figure out how to really tie the role non-tech to the random questions. Final interview for sales. I've watched a few videos. Any tips? Everything in the GCA interview when it comes to the random questions, and you're really tapping into the advice that I give. If we make it role specific, it's easier, right? So I always go back to that classic open a pastry shop question. So if it's for a sales role, well, the location doesn't matter. The blueberry muffins that you're trying to sell doesn't really matter. It's more about your sales approach, sales strategy. How are you going to get more people to buy blueberry muffins in that specific location? Because if we're just trying to solve for location and how we're going to staff it up and how we're going to do our marketing, those aren't as important. You want to go right into sales. And I think that it's the best advice because what it does is it removes a lot of the stress of the random questions. If you're always solving like you're in the role, go right to the responsibilities. Say, what are the responsibilities for this position? And then kind of chop through the answer in that way. Again, I think it's a huge stress reduction, and your interviewer is going to be in a like or similar role. So you start solving like you're in the role, and they're going to start picturing you in the position. Okay. I hope that that helps. Most common, what we're seeing lately over the last year or two, one random hypothetical question, one role related hypothetical question, and one catch-all behavioral question, something that you're just going to have a ton of examples for. Enhanced a project, created a strategy or process. You're going to have multiple examples. And the most common follow-up question to the behavioral question they ask in a GCA interview, what would you have done differently? So always be thinking about that as well. I hope that helps. If you have more questions, let me know. Hey, Liz, last week I asked for an intro to an HM for an opening that's a good fit. Friend said, I can't connect you to the recruiter because of compliance, but here's what I can do. What does compliance mean? Wow, I have no idea and no clue what they're talking about. Asked for an intro to the HM. Can't because it, oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Liz. I mean, if you're willing to tell us the company, that would be great. But compliance just sounds like I don't want to. I mean, I don't know any company that doesn't allow people to refer. But I guess there's got to be companies out there that don't allow that. But yeah, to me that sounds like an excuse. But again, I don't have enough context. Maybe a little more context would be helpful. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's really the waiting piece is really, really hard. So do all you can to breathe and relax and just know that the biggest piece that you want to be considering is just the fact that you have done the good work. Everything else is out of your control now. I know that doesn't make it easier, but you should be really proud of yourself that you've made it this far in the process. I mean, this is such a small percentage of people who even make it here, but just know that you've controlled everything. And I would say if you're going to HC, I know that this is very challenging in today's job market, but if you know you're going to HC, I would be trying to get other interviews. I'd be trying to get competing offers. Are they always going to help with a company like Google? Absolutely not. Most of the time, they don't help at all because Google's just going to pay more than 99% of the companies. But it's something that you may want to, that may help you focus your time, is just to go after some other roles, take that good momentum that you have. Clearly, you're a good interviewer. So, a couple of suggestions. Yeah, I hope that helps. And cheers to you. Thank you. Yes, it helps. We'll keep practicing. Thanks for your videos. They've been extremely helpful. Awesome. Awesome. Good luck. Again, just really, really focus on relevancy and just getting down as many behavioral answers as you can. Also, one piece of advice I have, I mean, to me, it's a good piece of advice. I don't know that everybody loves it, but Chat GPT, Claude, Llama, Gemini, they can fill in the gaps. You could type out your entire behavioral answer and then you could throw it into GPT and say, I think I missed some steps that are pretty likely in this scenario. Can you help me out? And then literally, like, GPT will remind you of a step you forgot you took. It's that good. So sometimes we can use Gen AI to fill in the holes of our behavioral answers. And even if it's not right, it could get us close and say, oh my goodness, I forgot to mention this or that. Hope it helps. Okay, networking hasn't been helping me much. It's been 2 months and I haven't received any calls. Being an international student adds a bit of complexity. Do you have any tips for getting interview calls? Sure. Yes. And so I get it. Like, 2 months feels like a long time to not get any calls, but that's pretty standard. Unfortunately, that's pretty standard, right? So keep trying. If you are an international student trying to, it really depends on like where you're trying to get the job. And so that can be tricky, right? If you're trying to, if you're in one country and it's really tricky to get in that other country and you're trying to push for those roles, just understand, what's the legality of like moving around. I'm sure this is something you've already looked at. I'm probably telling you something you already clearly know. Networking is a long game. And the reason why most people don't network enough is because they give up. And so the only strategy I know to tell you for how this works, and trust me, I'm kind of dealing with this on my business right now, is every no, every person who doesn't respond to you just gets you closer to a yes. And you just got to keep going and keep going and keep working at it. And again, creativity. Like, get out in your community, do things that are just different. Just meet with people, talk with people. And by the way, one of the best ways to network is to not ask for anything. It's to try and help others, because when you try and help others, they come back and help you. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it actually works. Okay. When initially talking to the recruiter, he told me a range and a number. I said it was okay. However, I feel I answered prematurely. Can I still negotiate or am I locked in? You're not locked in. And remember, part of the range and the number is, like, a lot of times this isn't total comp, it's a base salary number. Like, we don't really know. We don't have all the data. And I did a YouTube short on this. It's like, whenever we get into that initial negotiation and we agree with it, we're agreeing without a ton of information. And so if we agree to something and then they come back and they say, hey, well, you agreed to this, could say, after having the opportunity to learn more about the role and speak with the critical stakeholders, I need to reset my expectations. And that is such a fair comment. They really cannot argue with that comment. You're telling me to understand a salary or a total comp when I don't have any of the details. I have a job description. So it's a pretty easy reset, but I'm not worried at this point for you. I think it's fine. Just saying, okay, that sounds okay. That's all right. We don't have all the data yet. I hope that helps. Do you believe that the job market will get worse for FANG market? more layoffs. Yeah, I do. I mean, again, I see, I continue to talk to people about this, and again, there's so many voices and opinions, and I just always want to clarify that obviously I have a very specific lean here, but I just think automation removes jobs, and the companies that are going to automate the most are going to be big tech companies. They're going to automate out jobs, and it probably is an indicator of future layoffs. I still believe what's going to happen is we're going to see positions disappear much quicker than people think. So it's not going to be a slow burn. It's going to be like overnight, one position will just be gone. Like recruiters will just all of a sudden not have a job anymore. And I think that could actually happen today. But I think we're going to see something more like that. But I just don't see these companies getting bigger over time. I see them getting smaller with automation. I really like, we will get into this a little bit more about the recession and the current job market, but there are some definite indicators that are not as positive as we'd like, for sure. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have more questions. Thanks. Been studying for 6 weeks. So yeah, it's tough to relax now. Okay, awesome. Just if you can get in front of other roles, right? Like competing offers, again, it depends on where the competing offer is coming from, the leveling, but when you get that good interview momentum, I think people know I love the basketball analogy. I play basketball every week. And so, you're building up, you're shooting free throws, you're shooting 3-pointers, you're doing your dribbling exercises, you're doing your passing exercises, all leading up to the tryout, right? And then your game's at its peak condition when you go into that tryout for the team. It's the same thing with the interviews. You've done all the work. Go try out for 3 other teams, go interview for 3 other companies, because you're in that mode. Once you take a step back from that mode, you'll lose a lot of it. So just a recommendation. Hey, Jeff, greetings from Brazil. Amazing. How should one politely correct someone? For instance, if a candidate is answering a question incorrectly and you gently guide them in the right direction. Okay, we're flipping the coin. This is a rarity, which is awesome. Here's what I like to do. If I were conducting job interviews now, I think I would set greater psychological safety than I did in the past. Here's what I did at Google. I think it's pretty common knowledge, but I'll share again. I don't think it surprises anybody that the vast majority of interviews I did at Google were GCA interviews. I love doing GCA interviews, and quite honestly, I was incredibly tough. I mean, it just is what it is, right? But the psychological safety I would set up in those interviews is I would say, welcome, how are you? I'm going to ask you a very hard question to start. I'm here to help. I'm here to support you. I want to see you do well. So with this, you could add another layer and you could say, hey, I just want to let you know, like, your success is important to me, and I really want you to be successful. What that may include is I may just gently raise my hand and tell you, hey, like, I think we should pivot, and I might give you some advice. And the reason I'm doing that is to help you. I want to see you be successful. I love this approach. I think interviewers come in and they don't create an environment of calm and ease, and that would get the best version of the candidate and achieve the result everybody's looking for, which is to hire for the role. And so setting up a little bit of that psychological safety that I might step in, I might need to correct you from time to time, and I'm doing it for your benefit. I just want to get the best version of you. Take a quick step back. I know everybody kind of knows I do a little bit of storytelling in these lives, which I recommend strongly against in the interviews. But I remember it was relatively late in my time at Google, and I did a very robust prep session for the interviews. I still think whatever a recruiter prep is, it's nothing in regards to how candidates should be prepping. And the candidates stopped me and they said, why are you doing this? And I was a little like thrown off. And they're like, I don't get it. Why are you trying to help me so much? And in the moment, I just said, I just want you to be the best version of yourself in the interview. And it kind of stuck, like I had never thought about it that way, but that's the reality. So if we're always saying, I want to get the best version of you, I want you to feel comfortable, I want to let you know that I'm leading and guiding you for positive reasons, it's going to be great. Because again, it's the psychological safety thing it is important. And I know like maybe not everybody loves that, but put yourself in the candidate's shoes and you'll get it. Okay, we are at the 30s. So I'm just going to take a few seconds to prompt on my services and then we'll get right back to it. If you use the coupon code or promo code Paris, obsessed with the Olympics right now, 20% off the AI tool and interview mastery course just today. Then I'm still doing one-on-one interview, negotiation, and strategy sessions. You can find all that stuff at practiceinterviews.com. Tons of free resources, the blog, our Slack community. It's all free. We have about 4,100 members in the Slack community. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday and new original long form content every Monday. All right, let's go right back to it. Time sensitive and job market now, fewer jobs against many applicants. And if I applied for the one job and not accepted because there's one better than me, does that mean I lost the chance to apply for another job within the same company? Absolutely not. Okay, so you should and can apply to multiple jobs within one company. Now we think about company size. The bigger the company, the more opportunity there's just going to be way more opportunity for like or similar roles. So if we get rejected for one, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 roles that are pretty similar. So when thinking about multiple applications at one company, usually the bigger companies, that's going to be a more successful approach than the smaller companies. I know that's pretty limited advice, but I hope it helps. Your husband is an engagement manager at Google trying to backfill an L4 SRE role. Assigned recruiter who is new has been a nightmare. Repeatedly sends candidates unfit for the role. Is that the norm? Can he request a new one? It's really about now your husband, what he needs to do is he needs to have a sit down with the recruiter. The recruiter and hiring manager relationship should be a partnership. And so again, I love creating that psychological safety in space. So let's say the recruiter's name is Bob. And come in and say, look, Bob, here's what I want to do. Just in terms of getting the right candidates, I want to address the minimum qualifications I need for a candidate. If they don't have these 3 items, please don't send them on. When you're having initial calls with these candidates, I want you to ask them these 3 questions, and these are the responses I'm looking for. If they can't answer these questions with these types of responses or similar responses, they're not a fit. Please don't share them with me. So it sounds like it's on your husband to manage the relationship and create that psychological safety. And then if they don't see improvements, they should go to the recruiter's lead and say, look, I've taken these multiple steps and they're not working for me. I need a new recruiter. But they got to just own it. New recruiters, they can be challenging. And so there's some work to do. But what I love to do with hiring managers, so I actually have, I had a hiring manager and I used to hire for a TPM SRE role. And this was a incredibly difficult role to fill for, like very, very low success rate. And after like a couple months, I said to them, I'll call them Bob too. I don't want to say their name, but I said, look, I think what's happening is I need more strict criteria on the front end. Can we work together to come up with a few questions that I should be asking candidates? And let's get it down to 3 questions that if they can't answer those questions, I'm not moving forward with them. And that arrangement worked really, really well. I kicked out a lot of people who I would have sent on to Bob. And so, yeah, it's just some work. It's definitely an opportunity, but are they just going to switch the recruiter? Probably not. So it's on your husband to really work with them. Those are a couple suggestions. I really hope that helps. I'm happy to answer any more questions about that scenario or that relationship. Hi from India. Thanks for hopping on so late. You have 4 years of experience. You have 4 years of experience in finance and thinking of migrating to the USA, keeping in mind global recessions. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, so I would say that, obviously sponsorship is a big item. So you definitely want to understand the sponsorship criteria uh, for any given country, and especially in the US. It's tough, but that shouldn't stop you from trying. Do you have referrals? Do you have somebody who could help you get in? International wise, like referrals can absolutely help open the door. And I would say, can you land at a big company that has locations throughout the globe? So maybe you start in your current location and then you transfer to the US. I always see that as one of the most viable options. And I always tell my story of I really, really wanted to move to London when I was living in the Bay, and it didn't work out. But I only would have had that opportunity through a company like Google. Like just getting into London would have been really so difficult if I was just trying to do it as a U.S. citizen trying to apply to jobs in London. So just something to consider. I hope that helps. If I didn't answer your question, come back and let me know. Hi, Jeff. If the candidate went through all the interviews during the process and head of the hiring team wants the candidate to go through one last interview because he is having second thoughts, in that case, what could be possible thought process? The candidate being from Asia has applied for a position in Europe. Um, well, the head of the hiring team wants the candidate to go through one last interview. Second thoughts, well, I would look at it again. I just want to flip the tone. They maybe want you to go through an additional interview because maybe they just want more data or information. Maybe it's not second thoughts. If you've been told that, just look at it as an opportunity for you or whoever is going through it as a chance to really shine. And I would just say with these interviews, they're make or breaks. So it's just acknowledging and understanding that you need to put a little bit more pressure on yourself to really practice, prep, spend the time, make the commitment, the investment on that preparation piece. But I wouldn't I wouldn't worry too much about the other items. I would just focus in on what you can control, and what you can control is crushing the interviews. Everything else is out of your hands. Because the additional things, when we think about the additional things, they take away from our ability to have success. And so I don't know. Hope that helps. If you have more questions, let me know. If jobs now require showing a base salary range posting, is it possible to negotiate 10 to 15% higher on the top of that pay range? Unlikely. And I'm not saying not to do it either. So what I what I mean specifically is, let's say, for example, you're going after a job at Meta and it says the base salary range is 80 to 100K USD. Would I anchor at 120K, 130K? Totally, I would. Will they go outside of that range? Probably not. And now the ranges are getting obscene. 80K to 230K, but I'm rarely seeing companies hit the top of the range, if ever. But can you try to negotiate outside of that range? Sure, you're not a negotiation expert. You don't know. You didn't know that they couldn't go outside of the range. I always my default philosophy is I play a little dumb. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I thought that range was flexible. You're not supposed to be a negotiation expert. So that's kind of the fun of it. I always tell people, like, take that more junior approach and just say, oh, well, I didn't know. And that works. So will they go outside of the range? No. Should you try to negotiate outside of that range? Yes. Thank you. I did interviews in other companies, and the approach of everyone from Google is different. They were really supportive, like they were there to be a big help, and they wanted me to succeed. And that's great to hear. Usually that's not an across the board. So if everybody made you feel that way, that's awesome. That's how you should feel everywhere at every company. I've talked so much about this, and I think if I could sell this to companies, which I actually tried to build this business unsuccessfully, but if the primary focus of every organization when they thought about their interview process was making the candidate experience as amazing as possible, they'd hire the best talent in the world, and they'd make more money. But companies just refuse to do that. When you create a great candidate experience, even if the candidate doesn't get the job, they sell your brand for you. And if you create a great candidate experience where everybody's focused on making the candidate feel warm, interview feedback is a priority, just getting in touch with the candidate is a priority, that candidate feels so good that if they have multiple options, they're going to pick your company, maybe even if you don't pay the most. So companies are just losing out on like basic 101 emotional intelligence stuff that they should know. And I tried to sell this, and I couldn't sell it at all. It's kind of crazy. Happy to tell you guys more if you want to know. Jeff, do you think being likable matters in an interview is as important as having the right skills? Yeah, it's a mix of both, right? So you have to have the skills, you have to be likable, and then the last piece is you have to demonstrate the how. The how to me it's the missing piece of the puzzle. So you get a hypothetical question, you are showing them how you would do it in the job. So they're picturing you in the job. On the behavioral side, you're really focused in on how you did it. Past performance predicts future performance. They're picturing you performing similarly in their job. But no, being likable is huge. And that's why candidates that are like this and they're slouched, as opposed to somebody who's like, "Hey, Sue, are you having a great day?" It has a very, very different feel and experience. And so being likable is important. And I would say, if I'm being really honest with myself, I would reflect back on my interviews and say, that's why I got every job. I know now, reflecting back, how poor the way I structured my answers was, but I was likable. And that's why I think I got jobs. I came in with a good attitude. I used positive words. I was incredibly friendly, gracious, and kind. I asked questions that were all about them. And that's what got me jobs. So likability is huge. And so your attitude, and that comes with a smile, shoulders back. A lot of it's really positive body language and speaking with positive pitch and tone. All that stuff's going to help. Good question. I reached out to a Google recruiter cold over LinkedIn about a job that she's recruiting for. She said I can discuss next steps with her after completing assessment. Already passed. Okay. And I haven't heard from her since. I message her once a week. It's approaching 3 weeks. What should I do? I want you to reach out to this recruiter every single week, once a week, until they respond. I want you to be a constant reminder of their inability to close you out in one way or another. Close you out in terms of bringing you into the process, or close you out because they found other applicants. Passing that assessment does not guarantee interviews, but just make them feel the pain. I know at some point you'll just give up, but I would check in once a week, because just for them, they just have to see that pain point every single week when you follow up and they don't respond to you. Like, it's very easy for them to say, unfortunately, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. Keep exploring opportunities at Google. That's it. Otherwise, they're just going to have to keep seeing that email and ignoring that email on a weekly basis. My best guess is that, yeah, it's probably at this point not going to happen. Usually after about a couple weeks, they probably move forward with others, but keep following up. And yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but it's unfortunately more common than you would think. Q1 is normal for the recruiter not to disclose for which level I'm currently being assessed. Question 2, I have a googliness and leadership interview. What can I expect? Any common questions? Yes, recruiters will not commit to level because they're scared. They don't want to commit to a level and say, okay, we think it's an L5, and then you get through the full process and HC down levels you to an L4. The best way to get around an inability for recruiters, or just them not wanting to provide level, is you propose it to them. I think I'm going after an L4, L5 role. I know you can't commit to level, but can you tell me, is that right? Am I being targeted for around an L4, L5? Usually they'll answer that. And you're just bringing in the awareness and acknowledgement that they can't commit to it, but you're trying to get a range, and you can put in the final, like, if it is a 4 to a 5, like, I'd really like to target a 5 as you're thinking about the interview panel. Because if they start bringing 4s in, it's hard to get an L5 role when you've been interviewed by L4s. Just something to note. If you have more questions, let me know. I hope that helps. Oh, you did have a second question, which I'll answer now. The googliness and leadership interview has really leaned in one direction over the last couple of years, and it's really leaned towards decision making. So, like, decisions from tell me about a decision that you would change. That's kind of more on the negative tone, to positive stuff. Tell me about a better decision that was achieved because of a collaborative effort. It's a lot about how you tackle decisions from a hypothetical perspective, and then example-based positive decisions, how you've tackled failures, bad decisions, etc. So really put a focus and emphasis on decision making, secondarily inclusivity, and then third, collaboration. And the misconception is that these interviews are all behavioral. Absolutely not. They're a mix of behavioral and hypothetical. It just depends on your interviewer, but you should receive both types of questions. I've just finished my first year at uni. I received a full-time offer from Meta. I stay and finish my bachelor's or go take the offer. Okay. Okay, I just want to set the tone and stage that obviously, like, this is just my opinion, right? I would take the job. I don't believe, and for anybody who's had multiple layers of education, bachelor's, master's, PhD, it's a changing landscape and changing world. And so, I just don't think education, experience trumps education now all the time. In my opinion, I would leave school and I would go to Meta. And then if you ever want to finish school, you can always finish school. How often do people get job offers at Meta? Not that often. Right. So it's a big decision. I would consult a lot of people. If it's a position that you're really excited about, go get that experience. Once you have Meta in your background, nobody's going to care about your education. And this is hard. I used to really put a lot of emphasis on my education. And then just at a certain point, I needed to let it go and just say, look, it wasn't that important. Yeah, back forever ago when I graduated, it was, but I don't think it's as important now. So you got an interesting scenario. It's cool, but I would ditch the school and take the job, just by personal opinion. Hey, Jeff. Hi. Global recession and job market. Okay. So we're tapping into this a little bit. So let's tap in. I would say that, if we reflect over the last couple of years, ever since tech started laying off in 2022, it was kind of it's an indicator of things to come. And I don't believe that the job market has ever recovered from that time, regardless of the jobs reports and all these like positive signs that you see. As entrepreneurs, we can tell you it's never picked back up. It's never come back. And we always can kind of see it in the trends of how we make money. And I'm not talking about just like coaching to get into these types of companies. I'm in a mastermind group with people running all sorts of different businesses, and they've been seeing these indicators for a long time too. People are spending less money and companies are automating out jobs, and there is a ton of talent in the job market. and that is global. And so, yeah, I think we are in a little bit of a recessionary time. And even if we see these slight upticks, we're just down overall. So, yeah, I think that we're in a little bit of a global recession. And I know for big tech, especially as we look across the globe, these companies just, they're not hiring as much as they did in the past. And the numbers are weird. Like Google looks like they're hiring more people than they have been in a long time, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to be like I see 2,400 open jobs, but it just doesn't seem or feel that way. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, I do think we're in recessionary times right now. Hey, Jeff, I had just had my first round for an AM role. Been 2 days and not heard back. Is this normal for Google? 100% normal. 2 days is not a lot of time. I always give the same recommendation. If you haven't heard back, wait 5 business days. If you haven't heard back in 5 business days, I know that's painful. If you haven't heard back in 5 business days, then check in. So if it's been a couple of days, maybe it was late last week, check in at the end of this week. Let's just go to this last one and then we'll go backwards. Out of 4 questions, I answered 3 well, and 1/2 I answered well, and the other half not that well. What are the chances of getting to the next round? I always just give the same feedback. Anytime somebody asks that question, I don't know. I don't know if your self-reflection is correct. Like maybe you just did better than you think you did. Maybe it wasn't quite as strong, but without actually seeing the information, I can't say for sure. If you think 3 out of 4 or 3.5 out of 4 went well, it sounds pretty good. But I just would be guessing and not being really helpful or honest with you. So I don't know, but keep trying and definitely make sure you follow up with your recruiter late this week. And good luck. I'm interviewing for a role at Google and you have an informal sync set up by the recruiter with the VP. How should I approach this conversation? Seriously. But deep breaths. When you get onto that video call with the VP, positive body language, you're smiling, you're really excited, you're enthusiastic. Be ready for any questions. But what you really want to be thinking about is you have to have great answers for tell me about yourself, why the company, why the role, think 1 minute or less, and the rule of 3, think about 3 items. But they're probably going to tell you a little bit more about the future of the role, what they see for the team, for the org. My biggest recommendation for you, ask them questions about themselves at the end. What do you love about the company? What do you love about your role? What is the coolest thing about the team? What do you see as the positive future potential for what's going on in the org? Then a question I love to ask skip leadership. If I was to get hired for this role, is there anything that I could take off of your plate instantly that would help you save time, be more effective? Like I always want to think about what I can take off of a leader's plate. It makes you indispensable. So it's another great question, but treat it very, very seriously. They say informal, but you want to be pretty formal. Okay. But just have great warm-up answers. Be ready for any other type of question, then ask them great questions. And don't make it all you focused. Make it focused mostly on them. And then if they continue to allow you to ask questions, you can start to flip and ask questions that are going to be valuable for you and how you're going to be successful in the role. I hope that helps. Oh, we answered that one. Hey, Jeff, is the job market not good for software engineers? Okay, so again, my challenge always is that, and of course, I've been criticized for my toxic positivity, but I do want to keep it positive. But here's what I see for the future of software engineers. At the more junior level, it is going to get incredibly challenging. You are going to see better and better code being automated at the junior levels. I still think at the senior levels, there's going to be a lot of need from a strategy, process, code review, like all these things are going to be important, but we're definitely seeing a downtick in the number of software engineers that are hired. And if I were graduating high school right now, I would not be going into a software engineering role. I think that the future of those roles is a little in doubt. Now, again, as somebody non-technical, people might think that that's crazy, but I think software engineers in the long term, it's going to get tougher. Yeah. You are welcome. I got rejected by Google recently. Will that affect my future applications to the same or other roles? Well, if it's recently, then if you are applying, apply to different roles, not the same exact role. It depends on how good the interview feedback was. If I go in the system, I find your name, and the interview feedback's all negative, then it might have a little bit of a negative impact. But if you've only interviewed once, I'm definitely going to give you multiple chances. It's when people start to interview 3, 4, 5 times and the feedback has a constant negative theme that's when it becomes really challenging. But overall, you should be fine. Hey, Jeff, what's your thought on reapplying to a role I was rejected for 6 months ago? No interview. My resume improved both content, more relevant, and presentation format. Sounds great. Yeah. I think at 6 months, you're showing that you have additional skills and value that you can bring to the table. So, absolutely. Hey, Jeff, I might have a potential offer for a role that is L5. Is there a chance to negotiate L6 with considering I have another offer from big tech and having multiple years of experience? So, with up level, you should always ask. I am a huge fan. We ask for everything. We always ask. Will they give it to us? Probably not. But we got to ask. And so if they come in, we get approved at an L5 and you want an L6, what is the opportunity to up level? That'll be the conversation you have with your recruiter. If I was willing to do a couple more interviews, could I have a chance at an up level? And they'll just tell you yes or no. But you just getting up leveled because you want to get up leveled, that doesn't really happen. They can occasionally do it in later stages, but they won't do it because you ask. If you ask, you're probably going to have to take some sort of action, and usually that's in the form of additional interviews, typically. Hey, Jeff, is Agile dying? I see a lot of points these days on LinkedIn. You know what? I actually don't know. It's a good question. I'm just pausing to think about how Agile would be different in today's landscape as opposed to the past. I mean, I still like Agile methodologies. Like, I think it's a good way to do it, and I get that. Like, some people like Agile, some people like waterfall. Now I'm just using buzzwords, but I haven't really seen that. But again, the space, I touch technical quite a bit, but I haven't heard that. So, interesting comment. Yeah, it's definitely something I have to look into more, but I don't have a real pulse. I haven't really felt that personally, but I would definitely trust that what you're saying is real. What is the challenge of junior software engineers? That I can automate their job with AI. I mean, I don't want to say that we don't need junior level engineers. I just want to recognize the fact that AI can write pretty good code right now. And that's just going to get better over time. And so if I'm hiring, I'd hire a more senior level engineer who knows all the ins and outs and complexity and can work to automate that code with AI. That's just my 2 cents. That's where I think the market is headed. And I think that a lot of these software engineering jobs are going to disappear, and people are like, wow, Jeff, that's a big assumption, but I would definitely read up on it. There's some really high paying, very challenging and difficult roles that can be automated now. And so what is the key skill? The key skill is communication. And that's why you're still going to need software engineers, because they got to be communicating how things are working. There's got to be that human connectivity, working and collaborating within teams. And engineers obviously have to work with a lot of different teams, from product to program management to sales to everybody, right? So you're still going to have a need for them. But this is one of the one of the items that, again, creates some fear for me. If the best paying job over the last 40 years just disappears, like what is that? What are the other economic impacts of that? And I think they're pretty broad. So, obviously moving more into anything that's more prompt engineering based, that could be a really interesting space. And this is why, again, I think we'll also see more of a smaller economy, more SMBs, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, because of automation. It's much, much easier to run a business. If I look at the people who I hired even a few years ago, who I don't need anymore, but just because of GPT, which is the primary tool I use, I mean, there's a lot of roles that are going to disappear. And I continue to think that it's going to be a weird trend. Meaning, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see not like slow. It's going to be one big company removes one job completely and shows how you can automate out a position. And then 100 companies follow in the next month. And then 10 million jobs are just all of a sudden not available in the market anymore. That's what I think is the stronger likelihood, even though that's being less talked about. And I think it's an ongoing conversation. I mean, what is this going to look like in 3 years? I don't think any of us can even imagine, because it's moving so fast, and AI is learning at such a rapid rate that it's really just hard to understand what the future is going to look like. Just a small tip to fellow pals. In the Google interviews, I was asked the same question, which my recruiter mentioned as an example. So she was indirectly helping me. So are all recruiters do that? What recruiters do is usually they'll use a sample question that historically has been asked, and sometimes you'll get an older interviewer who still asks that question. So, if you get any sample questions, I would definitely practice them. Even if you don't get them, it's just a good exercise, and maybe you do. So it's a great tip. Thanks for sharing. Jeff, you might have answered this already. If somebody gets rejected because of bad interview performance, how long do they need to wait? Will your bad interview performance carry over more than a year? Typically, if you don't interview as well as you would have liked, typically for the same exact role, let's say you interviewed for a customer engineer role and then you're going back for a customer engineer role, you want to wait a year. That's typical. The interview performance at most companies stays with you for forever. Because it's in the system. And so, absolutely, would one set of bad interviews stop me from bringing a candidate in? No. But again, if there was historical data to show that this candidate time and time again just wasn't the best performer in interviews, then over time it will impact you. But the interview feedback doesn't just disappear after a year, it will stay with you forever. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I will watch your videos on decision making to find more areas that I can practice explaining my decision making process. Awesome. If it's a negative decision, focus in on what was wrong and then the steps you took to overcome it. But just all the decisions you've made, positive, negative, just be thinking about all the steps, and definitely be thinking about decision making through inclusivity and collaboration. Hi, Jeff. How can I negotiate my salary effectively if I only have one job offer and I'm interested in joining the company? You don't need competing offers to push up your comp. It's a little bit of a misconception, but you just ask for what you want. The biggest thing to remember when negotiating is understanding the company. So if you don't know their negotiation philosophy, you need to ask, what's your philosophy in regards to negotiation? Can you tell me a little bit more about how candidates historically have negotiated, and if there's any challenges with negotiation? We just want to ask that question. If it's these big companies, you just give them a big number and you just get after what you want. Not all companies work that way. So if it's not well known, like a company like Google is not going to rescind your offer because you go big. But another big company, maybe not a FANG company, but another big company might. So you just, if the data is not really clear, you want to ask what's their overall negotiation philosophy. I hope that helps. I'm 2 months into a 2-year apprenticeship in FANG. All I do is really admin work, which I don't enjoy. Is it worth staying or looking elsewhere? Look elsewhere. Um, Hold on to it as long as you can until you find another opportunity. If you're unhappy, 2 years is too long to be unhappy. That could change too. When you're in an apprenticeship, sometimes there's a little bit of a rotation. So one of those roles may be more administrative than another. You can also speak to leadership about taking on different types of tasks and initiatives. So I wouldn't totally give up. You're only 2 months in. But when we're unhappy in a job, there is no amount or length of time we need to stay. We can tell that story in a really positive manner in the interviews, enjoying my opportunity. But when this opportunity came up, I thought I needed to explore it. And obviously, I want to stay that length of time, but this opportunity was really exciting. And that's why I'm here today. You focus in on the new opportunity that you have, but I would never stay. As somebody who stayed in multiple jobs for too long, again, it's in the past and can't worry about it. But just my recommendation is I stayed at companies too long and it wasn't good. When you're unhappy, start looking around. But 2 months in, you need to be seeing if you could take on other projects, other initiatives. You have to be asking for more exciting work at this point, in my opinion. Is there an easy way to find out my feedback after getting rejected by Google? Can I ask the recruiter? Just want to know where I lack. You can ask. Will they actually provide that feedback for you? Probably not. And I got into this conversation with one of my clients actually yesterday via email. They weren't really getting feedback. This was specifically from Meta. And the reality is that it's challenging for recruiters because if they tell you something that could be seen as biased, that person could come back and sue the company. The recruiter loses their job. So it's kind of a lose-lose. The recruiter wants to provide really good feedback and the candidate wants feedback, but the legality issue kind of gets in the way sometimes. You should always ask. If they didn't give it to you, ask. They won't really give you anything. Say, can you just give me some vague feedback that wouldn't be anything too specific, but just something that will help me in my future interviews? Yeah, you always ask. Okay, we still have a pretty good audience. We are out of questions for the moment. So I am just going to cue in and kind of do on the half hours. I went a little over, but on the half hours, I'll just prompt to my services and let's start to wrap up and I will answer any last minute questions that come in. So if you use the coupon code Paris, yes, I'm very pumped about the Olympics right now, 20% off my AI tool and interview mastery course today. If you go to practiceinterviews.com, I'm still doing one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume, LinkedIn, and networking strategies. If you've never subscribed to my channel, I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday and new original content every single Monday. That's long form. And I'm trying to add in more shorts. I just need to put more emphasis and focus on that. Also on practiceinterviews.com, free resources, the blog posts. You can join our Slack community. So lots of opportunities there. Okay. Let's go ahead and finish out. Thank you everybody so much for being here. We are going to keep our eyes on what's going on globally with this recession in the job market. The job market is tighter. You're probably here because you're feeling it. It's not a feeling. It's a reality. The job market is tight. The talent out there is really, really great. And creativity in regards to your networking is going to be one of the most critical ways to land a job these days. Okay, let's answer this last question. I'm now head of product, senior director by Redford, want to apply to Google to a director of product. Should I do it or apply to group level? You're now head of product, senior director by Redford. I don't know Redford, but typically just when you think about size of company, if it's like director at a small company to director at Google, usually you're going to drop at least a few levels. The way I want you to always be thinking about it is look at it from a compensation perspective. But director to director is usually not, or head to head is not apples for apples. You have to be thinking about the size of company. And usually that means that if we work at a small company with a big title, we're going to have to go down from like a head or senior director at a small company to a manager level at a big company. I hope that helps. Hey, Jeff, can you share your thoughts on why non-FANG tech, mid-sized company like Snowflake might be better now? Well, Snowflake's a good company. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say them in comparison to another. I mean, one of the reasons now Snowflake has a good brand, right? So, one of the reasons why we go to big companies, the two reasons why we go to big companies, brand and money, and real money, right? Like, so when they're a public company and you get equity, that's real money. You can cash out that money, you can take that money. And then I don't know where Snowflake is at right now, but like if it's options and it's equity, but it's not like truly real equity, it's just not as good, right? But I think a lot of it also depends on you. What is your mindset? Do you like to build things from scratch, really build up, build up, build up? Or do you like to enhance already well-established processes? Enhancing well-established processes, really big company, building things, smaller company. That's usually a very, very powerful exercise that I have found. But I can't speak to one or the other being great because I'm really, again, I'm here to help people get the corporate jobs, but I still think the best approach now is working for yourself. But that is not a reality for everybody, and I understand that. So I hope that feedback helps. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Hey Jeff, thanks. Given that we bought Snowflake, did who bought Snow? Did Google buy Snowflake? I can't keep track. What do you think about Databricks? How strong is that brand? Databricks is a pretty good brand. Remember, like it also depends your industry. Like in our industry, like people know Databricks. Does everybody know Databricks? No. I like the big brands because they're powerful. Even if you're not in them, you know of them. And so that just carries weight. That's priceless. But I don't know. I don't. Well, Databricks has a good brand too. So I don't know a ton about working there. I had one friend who worked there for a little bit, and I think they liked it. But yeah, sorry, I know that's not a great answer. What real equity would be good to get from a company? That's a big question. It just would depend on your level, your role, all that stuff. But real equity is just a public company. That stock is viable. I can sell it and put that money in the bank if I want. And it's just if a company is pre-IPO, I can't do that. Now, it doesn't mean that there are pre-IPO companies that are available on the secondary shares where you can sell your shares on a secondary market because they definitely are going public and they're just in that pre-IPO stage. But for the really small startups that just throw a ton of equity at you, I just say build that offer like that's not real money because it's not real money. It's funny money and it could be worth a ton, but how many companies go to IPO and those shares blow up over time? It's just, it's way less than 1%. So just that's how I look at it. Real equity is a company that's public now or a company that's definitely going public and that equity can be sold on the secondary market. And you can find that out by Googling it. Everything else to me is just funny money. And I don't really put a lot of stake into it personally. That's just my personal way that I look at those offers. Okay. Let's pause for a second. Again, we still have a pretty good audience today. So we are out of questions. I'm happy to just kind of pause and sit in the moment as more questions come in. Okay, cool. You are welcome. If I applied for a couple of Google positions, one immediately got no proceed. Second, I passed the GHA and I haven't heard from them in a couple of weeks and no update. Doesn't mean it is a no proceed. Probably. if it's been a couple weeks, if you pass the assessment and you don't hear back for like 2 to 3 weeks, it's probably a no. At 4 weeks, it's pretty much definitely a no. From what I'm seeing from the trends of when they introduced that this year. So I can't say for sure, but it's probably a no. Thanks, Jeff. I love to build, so learning to a mid-sized company after a Google layoff. Yeah, Trevor. I mean, I think that again, I think we're leaning towards a small economy anyway. I just think with automation, it's much easier to roll out a company and build it with one person or a few people than it was in the past. We just have way better tools to do it. So I like the small company option, and you've done the big company thing. Switch it up, try it. Maybe you love it, maybe you don't, but yeah, definitely give it a shot. And obviously, with your background, you're going to have some opportunities for sure. Okay. Again, I still feel like, I don't know, I'm just getting a pulse today that there's more questions out there. We usually at this point, we're rounding down, but the audience is kind of hitting around its peak right at the end. So if you have any additional questions, comments, this is an open Q&A session. Obviously, we've been seeing some of these recessionary items hitting for quite a while now. And I think we're going to continue to see that a little bit. It's not all gloom and doom. It's just understanding that the job market is tighter now. And so just got to make as many good decisions as you can and just continue if you are looking to get back to networking as much as possible. It's painful. I get it, but you got to do it. Okay. I'm going to, if any additional questions come in, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap up. One last time. Coupon code Paris, 20% off of our AI tool. And I haven't even mentioned this today. We just introduced modular feedback at the end of last week. What does that mean? We're not only breaking your answers down into pieces in the feedback, we're actually sectioning it out. So if you just struggle with assumptions in your hypothetical questions, you can just look at that hypothetical feedback and really narrow on the hypothetical feedback on assumptions and really narrow down in that section. We are the only AI tool that has modular feedback in the world. It is a game changer. It makes understanding the pieces easier. You're not trying to fix everything. Let's fix one little piece at a time. It makes it feel less overwhelming. And obviously still getting great feedback on the interview mastery course. I'm still doing one-on-one coaching, interview, negotiation, and strategy sessions. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday, new original content every Monday. If you want to find out anything about me, you can get everywhere by going to practiceinterviews.com. It will lead you to any direction that you like. I am going to answer this last question, and then I'm going to bounce off. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, Jeff, what happens in Google Debrief? There were 3 rounds and then 1 discussion with the right VP. VP did share they had 2 more candidates to connect with after me. There's a debrief this week. Yeah, so oftentimes, especially if you're speaking with the VP, my assumption is that you're going after a relatively big role, right? So maybe your direct hiring manager is a director and they report up to a VP. Oftentimes there's a senior director level as well, but you're speaking with the VP because they like you. The debrief is that's probably a more casual debrief where they're just talking about the ideal candidate. Then likely a statement of support is written by the hiring manager. You'll go to hiring committee, and then you'll have to go through a final executive review. There's a lot of steps. They've reintroduced a lot of steps. So I can't say for sure when they talk about a debrief what that looks like, but you're 1 of 3. You're in a great spot. And now you have to do the toughest thing. You have to wait, which I know is really tough, but keep us posted. Come back and let us know how it goes. And obviously, wish you the best of luck. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. I will be back next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Until then, be great, do great, have a great day.